Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is Armin Navabi. And hi, Armin. How's it going?
Good.
You can just say a quick hi. I know. So Armin has been a little bit stressed because we were trying to do this podcast, and then right when we were about to do it, maybe it's a divine act, but YouTube went down. So YouTube's not working.
I think we know which gods are real now because we've been shedding on Islam and Christianity for a long time, and none of this has happened. But now we're about to shed on Hinduism, and YouTube went down.
That's a word.
So I think we know which gods are the real god. Yeah.
Anyway. So today what we're going to be focusing on, this is interesting. I've been looking forward to this episode for a very long time. So India is the largest secular democracy in the world, right? And India is actually the birthplace of my parents. My father was born in Allahabad, my mother in Delhi. My mother was actually born in Mathura, but her family's from Delhi. And even though it's the largest secular democracy in the world, religion still plays a really important role in its society and its politics. Now, 80% of India's population is Hindu, but it also has the third largest Muslim population in the world after Indonesia and Pakistan. And the Muslims in India are about 14%. So even though there have been Hindu-Muslim tensions for centuries in India, the birth of Pakistan in 1947 was because of those Hindu-Muslim tensions and a little bit of help from the British. But anyway, the recent years, we've seen the rising influence of a really fervent kind of Hindu nationalism, right? And this is something that's also called Hindutva. And this has, through the years, now it's gained a sort of central position in Indian politics. So that brings me to our guest today. What we have in, again, this is somebody I've been corresponding with and reading for a very long time. He's a writer. He's an engineer. His name is Zubin Madon. He writes for the HuffPost. He writes for the Nation. He's actually written a lot for Atheist Republic as well. So he was born into a Parsi Zoroastrian family. So he's neither Muslim nor Hindu. And he was ordained as a priest at age 12, but eventually he saw the light and he became an atheist. And that's kind of one of the reasons I think he's a great guy to have here, because he's very knowledgeable and he's an absolutely fantastic writer. And he has a pretty good sense of what's going on in terms of both, all of the religious extremism and all of how these things interplay in India, whether it's Islamic extremism or Hindu extremism and so on. So Zubin, anyway, I'm going to shut up now. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you. It's an honor to have you here.
Hi, Ali. It's great to be here. I've been following you on Twitter for a long time. In fact, you were one of the first people I followed. And I read your stuff for a very long time. So it really helped me kind of shape my thoughts and articulate my thoughts on atheism and religion. So thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I've been reading your stuff since you started, actually, and I think it's been fantastic. Like I said, you're a really good writer, and I hope you keep doing it. So to start, let's talk about for this, because this is for a general audience, and we've got a lot of, we actually have a lot of listeners in Muslim-majority countries and a lot of Arab countries as well. So I thought we'd start with just a quick review of the basics about India and Pakistan, the split in 1947 and how it happened. Do you want to go through that, or should I just run through a quick thing?
Oh, you can. You go ahead about the partition and stuff. I mean, being from Pakistan, I'm sure you have a slightly different perspective as well. I'd like to listen to that.
Yeah, I don't really have a very strong opinion on it, apart from the fact that it happened, because it happened a long time before I was born. As I said, my parents are both in India. They both migrated. My father migrated a year after partition. My mother about 3 years after partition. Their entire families came here. So I refer to myself as an Indian Pakistani, which upsets both people. And I tell them, I'm like, if you're American and your parents are Italian, you're Italian American, right? They were born in Italy. So that's why, in that way, I'm Indian Pakistani. But and I know that, so in the British basically came into India around, I think, in the late 18th century or so. Correct me if I'm wrong about any of this stuff. And they essentially, all of India was a British colony at the time. It was a mixture of many different faiths. Hinduism, Islam those were the two main ones. And then you also had, you had Christians, you had Parsis or Zoroastrians, like yourself, or your background at least. So it was a mishmash of a lot of different sort of subcultures and religions and thousands of different languages. It's obviously it's a huge country. It's the second largest country in the world by population, and at that time it would have been the largest if it had stayed together. And in 1947, the country split into two countries. You had India in the center, then you had West Pakistan, which is modern day Pakistan, and you had East Pakistan, which is modern day Bangladesh. So at that time, and this was split along religious lines. So this was one of the biggest sort of mass migrations in history, where up to 14 million people moved either from India to Pakistan or Pakistan to India. There were big Sikh communities and Hindu communities in modern day Pakistan that had to go to India, and many, many Muslims came from India to Pakistan. A majority of Muslims actually stayed in India at the time, which is why India still has almost as many Muslims today as there are in Pakistan today.
Yeah. India has, I think, the second largest Muslim population after Indonesia.
It used to be. I've seen now that they're saying it's the third largest, but just by a hair.
What's the second?
So Pakistan, India. Pakistan.
Egypt is the largest Arab Muslim country, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what's the second in general, if it's not India?
Pakistan. So Pakistan has, but they're very, very close. It depends on what year you look up. Sometimes
I think for most part of the 7 decades after independence, the population of Muslims in India was a lot more than the population of Muslims in Pakistan.
Right.
So that was really funny, because that totally negated the idea of the reason for having an Islamic state. So.
Right.
Yeah, no, that was one thing, and then the other. I think the Pakistan was created on the basis of what they call the two-nation theory, and they said that the Muslims and Hindus are two separate nations, and they must have two separate states. So that happened, but then just a couple of decades later, in 1971, Bangladesh split off from Pakistan too. So
let's talk about Hinduism now.
I just want to get a quick primer, and I'm almost done. So that's basically the history of the country, and then the region. And then what happened was that Pakistan eventually became officially an Islamic state, and it started being called the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And India was essentially the largest secular democracy in the world, and it still continues to be, because it had so many different elements and so many religions to it. So does that cover it kind of, or is there anything else you want to add, Zubin?
Well, yeah, it does. Well, I'd like to add, if we are going back to the whole Hindu-Muslim tensions kind of thing, as Armin mentioned in his tweet, it goes way before partition. Most historians believe that this pan-Indian Hindu identity came about.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the tensions between Muslims and Hindus.
That's right.
Right.
This pan-Indian Hindu identity came about in the Middle Ages as a reaction to the Muslim invasion. You have to understand that Hinduism is very, very fluid and very, very diverse as a religion, as an ideology. For example, when I go climbing in the Himalayas, I see they sacrifice animals inside Hindu temples. But for Hindus in South India or maybe in Uttar Pradesh, that would be absolute no-no. So the way Hinduism is practiced across the country differs. And before the Muslim invasion in the Middle Ages, every kingdom had their own thing. They did their own thing. And, it was only after Islam came in and posed a threat to India that Hindus kind of thought that they needed this pan-Indian identity to combat this threat. It might sound like apologia, and a lot of liberals also fall into that trap to say that Hindutva is just a reaction to Islam. But there might be some truth to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back, Hinduism is very fluid, and
can I adjust what you just said just really quickly? Like, a lot of people think explaining something is the same as excusing it. Just because you're explaining how something came to be, that doesn't mean you're coming up with excuses for it. Right? Absolutely,
but yeah, that's a good point.
Right. Go ahead.
So Hinduism is very fluid as an ideology, as a religion. It has many sects. It has many philosophies. You will not find this authoritarian book like the Quran, like the surahs or the hadith, which will say, okay, that is the ethos of Hinduism, which also makes it very difficult to, debate it. And this is normally the curtain behind which these Hindutvavadis nowadays hide, So as soon as you point out verses from the Manusmriti and say that, look, this is misogyny and racism in Hinduism, they'll say, oh no, we don't take these scriptures seriously. Hinduism is just a way of life. Suddenly,
the Manusmriti, they say it's just a book of law. It's not, and then, but when they want to justify something religious, then they will quote it. That's
absolutely. And when they want to subdue the lower castes for 3,000 years, they used it very effectively. But so if you criticize any part of the scripture, they'll say, oh, Hinduism is just a way of life. It's not even a religion. But when it suits their convenience, it suddenly becomes a religion. So they'll keep shifting goalposts and keep it's a very fluid.
Right. I never understood that, because people say Hinduism is a way of life, it's not a religion, but religion is a way of life. Like, I don't understand. Something can be a religion and a philosophy and a way of life at the same time. But the thing is, because it's a religion, it's a shitty way of life and it's a shitty philosophy. Right?
Well, absolutely. But what they argue is that even atheism is part of Hinduism. They call something like the Karvaka philosophy, and you'll have all these Karvaka atheists coming in and joining Atheist Republic just for their anti-Islam fix, Right. And most of them will follow you. But as soon as you criticize Hinduism, they'll turn on you so quick.
Oh yeah, and, I've noticed that
they're very passionate.
The people that are passionate about criticizing them the most, which are like the biggest snowflakes in the world, are mostly Muslims, Hindus, Trump supporters, far leftist social justice warriors. I think these four groups are what I've noticed that you can't criticize.
Oh yeah, but, very triggerable.
I think Ali, passionate is a very euphemistic and mild way of putting it.
But I'm a nice guy.
Yeah. But Hindutva trolls online are, I think, by far the most coordinated, the most vicious, and amongst all these groups. I mean,
even compared to Muslims. I mean, I don't
absolutely. Absolutely. I have criticized, as Ali is aware, I write all the time on Islam. I post cartoons. I get flack, but I have never been. But when you criticize Hinduism, it's like a gutter opens up in your mentions. It's like I see what
you're saying.
And also on Indian Twitter, mostly the women, free-thinking women who speak their minds, they are piled on by Hindutva troll armies, and they get rape threats. At least the fundamentalist Muslims don't do it as much I mean, they're equally bad, but they don't do it as much as the Hindutva trolls. They are absolutely the pits.
But are they? Is there a threat to life as well? I mean, I know that there's been incidents of people being killed and
absolutely
because a Muslim was dating a Hindu girl, or a Muslim ate beef, and they just absolutely lynch them. But
lynch them.
Is it as bad as the kind of threats that people get for being apostates and from Islam and so on?
Well, yeah. So we are grading on a curve here. I'd say. Well, there have been murders. Free thinkers like Dabolkar, Fansare, have recently been murdered in India, and the investigations are now telling us that these murders have been called by and executed by right-wing Hindu organizations. And let's not forget Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, or as he is known as the Mahatma, was murdered by an RSS cadre, Nathuram Godse. He was an RSS man. That is like the largest militant Hindutva organization in India. So let's. I'd like to talk about
just a quick question. I mean, I've been criticizing Hinduism as well. I do get a lot more death threats from Muslims. And given that you also have been criticizing Islam, but you're getting more threats from Hindus, does it seem to? I mean, this is just a hypothesis. I don't know if it's true at all. It's just I'm just thinking. Do you think that I get more Islamic death threats because they see me as somebody from their community that left? And you get more Hindu threats because they see you as Indian and part of their. I mean, you were never Hindu, but they see you as somebody from inside that is like it's an enemy from inside. That because I mean maybe because I've been focusing more on Islam that I get more Islamic death threats. Go on.
Maybe you are getting these death threats from the Arab immigrants or Arabs from the Middle East.
No, it's mostly Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I think in that terms, my audience is more Indian tweeters. So, and Indian Muslims are, even though they are absolutely, some of them, I'd say as a whole, they are very dogmatic and everything, but they are not as vicious perhaps as the devout Muslims.
I'll send some your way. I'll send some of my some
so this is actually one thing that I wanted, because we'll keep going with this, but I wanted to ask you just really quickly this question about the Muslim community in India. And I think I've mentioned this before. So the Muslim community in India is they're a minority. I mean, they're a huge population, like second, third largest in the world, but only 14%. Now, for some reason, it seems that I heard Fareed Zakaria talk about this. He said that despite that, there's not a single international Islamic terrorist that has come from India. That has come from India. So the Indian Muslim community tends to not produce terrorists at the same kind of rate as, say, say Pakistan or Egypt or some of these other countries that they come from. And there's many reasons. Some people say, well, it's because it's a secular state, it's pluralistic, so they have to be tolerant, like the Muslim communities in other places where they're a minority. Or some people say that it's because there was more Sufi influence in India among for the Muslims, whereas in Pakistan there was more Arab influence. So, do you have a take on that, or what do you think?
Well, I think it's hard to describe it in black and white. There is a lot of truth to what you said, but recently we've also seen some very educated Muslims from India join ISIS, things like that, and there have been homegrown terrorist groups as well, which is not as bad or as prolific as the ones that come from across the border, that are funded by all these Islamic neighbors that we have. But yes, I mean, again, grading on a curve, I'd say even though the devout Indian Muslim is very dogmatic and in a lot of ways. I mean, you will not see too many liberal Muslims coming out on the streets in support of Salman Rushdie or Danish cartoonists. In fact, some time ago, there was a Urdu newspaper and the editor Shirin Dalvi posted a story about the Charlie Hebdo murders on the front page, and she was ostracized by the community. She lost her job. It was very difficult for her to even make a living, and some of us atheists set up a crowdfunding for her, and she had to go into hiding. So, yeah, I mean, do Indian Muslims take up AK-47s and go through the streets? Absolutely not. I think all that you talked about, plurality and things, it definitely holds true. But within the community, they are quite pretty dogmatic and
like they're conservative.
I have a lot of questions. And we also have some Patreon questions. But before we get to that, so let me know how accurate this is. When I was studying world religions and stuff, the way it was described to me is like, if you think about Islam and Christianity and other religions, they're mostly like a tree. Like you have some core, which is the same in all of them. And then you have branches off of the core. The core is the same among every off of them, but then they have different branches where they have different ideologies or different views on some details, but they have a core that they all share the same. But when it comes to Hinduism, that core is missing. It's not like a tree. It's more like a river, and there's different streams, and every stream is like separate from the other streams.
Absolutely.
Is that
absolutely?
A good analogy?
Yeah. And that is what Hindutva tried to eliminate. Hindutva, as an ideology, tried to make a pan-Indian movement and make Hinduism into this monolith and kind of masculine ideology. Most Hindutva ideologues from the early 1900s talk about how weak Hindus are and how weak our ideology is, and we have to be more like the Muslims, stuff like that. Okay. So, but coming back to Ali,
whenever somebody says we have to be more like the Muslims, that's when you know the shit has hit the fan.
Yeah. So coming back to it, the Deobandi sect, as you know, in India and in pockets of Uttar Pradesh. They are extremely radical. Some of those pockets are pretty bad. And in fact, those were the areas in the 1920s that really, really voted for a separate state. So anyway, which brings me to another point. As bad as Hindutva is, now I might get a lot of flack for this, and I am open to being corrected by Indian Muslims. I absolutely am. But as bad as Hindutva is, and I also believe, as our Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister Nehru did, that majoritarian bigotry is always more pernicious to a democracy than the minorities' bigotry, because it has the potential to, destroy the democracy and transform the country. But if you see online, on Twitter, on Facebook, the fiercest opposition to Hindutva comes from liberal practicing Hindus. They absolutely do not want to live in a Hindu theocracy. They definitely want India to be secular. I never see that kind of vocal opposition or support for a Salman Rushdie or a Hebdo cartoonist from Indian Muslims.
Right.
I stand to be corrected. But let me just give you one example. Quickly, recently, just this month, a documentary film has come out, a brilliant documentary film called But What Was She Wearing? It has been made by a Tamil Brahmin woman filmmaker who turned atheist. She came from a very orthodox family. The film is about workplace sexual harassment.
Wait, Tamil Tiger woman?
No. Tamil Brahmin woman.
What does that mean?
Brahmin is the high. Yeah, go ahead. You explain.
The upper caste. Anyway, so her name is Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi Sundar.
Well, we have to explain the caste system if we want to explain that. Like, do you guys want to like create a structure for this episode where we go through some basics then of Hinduism?
No, let's just go with this story and then we'll go into
after the story. Let's do like some basics of Hinduism and then some.
Sure.
And I have some questions about that. And then go on.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Yeah. So anyway, so Vaishnavi's documentary is about workplace sexual harassment, and she has a music video where Hindu scriptures, the misogynist Hindu scriptures pop up, and then there is a dance sequence around it. And at the end of the video, all these women gather and they burn the Hindu scriptures in a fire. And it's such a powerful image. It's such a powerful image. And this woman has taken this on, coming from a very conservative Brahmin background, and of course now she's an atheist. But it is just so brilliant and so powerful. But you will never see
live though. Like if somebody in Pakistan burned the Quran, they wouldn't be able to. Like, is she in hiding or anything?
No. So absolutely. So that's another thing. Hindu apologists will tell you that burning Hindu scriptures will not get you beheaded. Which is true. But even then, the point I'm trying to make is that Hindus are fiercely opposed to Hindutva and this Brahminical movement that it is, and they do things like this. But you'll never see an Indian Muslim make a film like this where a woman is burning the Quran and the misogynist scriptures, and even if she does, she will be labeled a right-wing shill, and by the secularists, and she will be accused of carrying water for Hindutva, because that is another thing. Criticizing Islam in Muslim majority countries is a no-no. In secularist and leftist circles, people like Mona El-Tahawi have very vocally said when she was in India that, you're in a Hindu majority country, so criticizing Islam is punching down, that sort of thing. Anyway, so my point was that there is hope because the average educated Hindu is one of the fiercest opponents of Hindutva. So Armin, like you said, let's start with the basics a little bit. So what happened was
so let's do the caste system. You want to do, or you want to do more basic?
Well, yeah, let's go with what Zubin's saying. So Hinduism is generally about, I think it's 10,000 years old or so, or
it's hard to tell. But yeah, the caste system forms a very integral part of it, and I'll also come to how Hindutva as a movement is trying to whitewash that caste system and kind of show it in a different light. So we'll start by maybe we should start a little bit before independence. Hindutva as a movement, the ideological basis of it was laid down by these philosophers like Dayanand Saraswati, Vivekanand, Aurobindo, and Savarkar. These four men, all upper caste. And that is another thing. The Hindutva movement, all its ideologues have been upper caste Brahmins, like very, very privileged Hindu men. Which is why historians like Gyanendra Pandey rightly point out that Hindu nationalism is an absolutely upper caste racist movement. What happened?
They also had the most to benefit from it, right? As you said, that they were
absolutely.
They want to preserve that. I mean, this is the highest caste, so they'd want to preserve that.
So among all things Hinduism, I think the caste system and the reincarnation and karma, these are, if anything is core, these are some of the core views, right? Which is probably Which is
it depends.
Go on.
It's also
let's go on with what you were.
It's also a highly ritualistic religion. So anyway, what happened is in the early 1900s, Muslims started really coordinating themselves and lobbying for favors from the British. There was the Khilafat movement that you must have heard of, Ali, and there was the Muslim League, which really took the issues of Muslims and really lobbied to the British, and they even managed to get separate electorates for Muslims at the municipal level. In 1916. So when this happened, the Hindutva ideologues really saw this as a threat, because the Hindus were never that cohesive. As I told you, it was so fluid. A Hindu from the mountains, his rituals, practices are very, very different from a Hindu from the plains. So these Hindutva ideologues kind of realized that there was a need for us to organize militantly, just as Islamist groups are doing. And that's how all these upper caste men like Govalkar and Hedgiregar and Savarkar, they came up with these organizations like the Hindu Mahasabha and the RSS to kind of galvanize Hindu youth and make Hindutva like a political form of Hinduism. And the basic philosophy is that Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. So the language, Hindi, the race, of course, Savarkar considered Hindus as a race, and that India as a land is for Hindus, and all other minorities must play second fiddle or keep their fairy tales private and respect our culture and icons. And so basically they wanted a Hindu theocracy. They did not like the idea that India would gain independence and become a secular democracy as the Congress party wanted. The Congress party at the time was the dominant mainstream political party in India. And our first Prime Minister Nehru was an atheist. And the Nehruvian secularism has become a dirty word today, because the majority Hindus believe that Nehruvian secularism is equal to minority appeasement. So they believe that the Congress always appeased Muslims, and they never took took the Hindus for granted, basically.
And
so
when they're worried about minorities, that just means Muslims, right? That's the minority that they're worried about. They're not worried about any other minority, right? Okay.
Absolutely. So this is.
By the way, I also wanted to say that Nehru has some really, really great quotes on. I mean, he was a pretty vocal atheist, actually.
Absolutely.
Jawaharlal Nehru, and so there's a lot of interesting things that he's written about it as well. If anybody wants to look that up.
He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So Hindutva as a movement started at around this time, between 1916 and 1925, and then it kind of went from strength to strength. It is a very boringly predictable and ideology. It's nothing creative. If you read the speeches of its founders and its ideologues, it's very similar to how any far-right extremist fascist movement comes about. The otherizing of the enemy and persecution complex and victimhood, like constantly harping about the Muslim invasions that destroyed Hindu temples and all, which may be true to some extent, and talking about nonsense like the Hindu Holocaust, apparently that the Muslim invaders kind of wiped Hinduism off almost, things like that, and constantly harping on that, which is pretty ahistoric, because the Mughals, the Muslim rulers who ruled India for a while, they weren't any worse or better than the Hindu rulers before them. Hindu rulers like Ashoka probably murdered more Hindus in wars than all these Muslim rulers put together. And in Maharashtra, you have...
So India was ruled by a... So I just wanted to... Just for the audience, that India was ruled by many Muslim leaders, including the Mughal Empire, which was, I think, in power for about 500 years or so, right?
Absolutely, about over 400 years for sure. And originally, they were invaders. They were they were a mix of Turks and Mongols and things like that. But yes, so Hindutva constantly uses this persecution complex and victimhood to kind of create this hatred, and you can, and it's very typical. You know how the Southern whites at one point of time painted the black man as the rapist, and that the white women have to be protected from him. If you read speeches of people like Gowalkar or Madan Mohan Malaviya, his address to the Hindu Mahasabha from 1922, he talks about how the Muslim men are a threat to Hindu women and we have to protect the honor of Hindu women and shit like that. That's how it starts, you know.
Yeah,
and the whole speech is about that. And of course there are conspiracy theories, like Gowalkar said that the Christians and the Muslims are globally conniving to make Hinduism weaker, and they are kind of
together, like they're
yeah, together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he said the Christian missionaries, along with the Islamists, are funding the extremists in Assam, in the east of India, and nonsense things like that. And you know, when I read all these things, it's so similar. I work on an oil rig, and I meet these southern whites from the Bible Belt all the time. And when you talk to them, they will make you believe that the white man is the most persecuted minority in America, you know, and has got the rawest deal. And everything is the fault of the black people and the Democrats. And, you know, you talk about gun violence, like police atrocities, and they'll tell you, oh, what about black on black crime, you know, things like that. And they'll say things like, oh, we weren't responsible for slavery. It's the Africans themselves who enslaved each other and told us, take these slaves, you know.
Well, you know, one other thing that there's a commonality of, right, is the mixture of fervent religiosity and nationalism. So you have that with some of these southern evangelicals, where there's a sort of a jingoistic nationalism combined with, you know, just mindless religious fervor, and you have the same kind of thing with the Hindutva, and then you have the same kind of thing with, for instance, even with jihadists, right? Like who are obsessed with the caliphate. There's an element of nationalism, so that combination is actually particularly toxic.
You know what I see, the three most mixes of religion and nationalism is one with Hinduism and Hindu nationalism in India. The other one is in Iran with Zoroastrianism, where nationalism and Zoroastrianism are merging together. Like it's a religion is used as a source of national pride. The only
it was a Persian heritage, right? Yeah. That was associated with Zoroastrianism.
And in other places in Europe, like white nationalism either does that with Christianity, or if they want to be really, they're going to go really ancient or go to the roots, they do that with Viking ideology or the gods of like Odin and stuff like that. So it's very interesting where religion is used as a way to claim. Actually, it's basically three things merging at the same time. It's ethnic pride, national pride, and religion. It's kind of like
absolutely.
Three things at the same time. Yeah.
And if you read the writings of Savarkar, who coined the term Hindutva and is considered to be the father of Hindutva nationalism, that is exactly what he says in his book, Hindutva, Who is a Hindu? That's the title of the book. And that's like their Bible for modern day Hindutvavadis. So that's exactly what he says.
It's like the trinity of these.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. But for most part of independent India, they had no influence at the center stage politically, the Hindutvavadis. Congress ruled India for most years. Recently, after 1992, after the demolition of the Babri Masjid, that kind of propelled the Hindutva right-wing party to center stage. So first of all, a few basics. The militant arms of Hindutva that I talked about, Hindu Mahasabha and RSS, they have been around before independence. But after independence, they realized they didn't really have any political clout to really make the changes they wanted. The most important change they want is to change the constitution. And, they are always saying secularism is a dirty word and that this should be a Hindu nation. So they realized if they wanted this, they had to float a political party. So that's how the Jan Sangh came about, and which then transformed into the Bharatiya Janata Party, or the BJP, which is now in power. So BJP came to power after this 1992 Babri Masjid incident, where
can you explain that for the audience a little bit in a little bit more detail? Quick?
And I have so many more questions after.
No, yeah, we have to get to the caste system too. I think that'll be kind of
okay. So the demolition of the Babri Masjid was like a turning point in Hindu-Muslim relations in India. This was a mosque from the Middle Ages. It was really kind of a historical. You can say it was a historical monument, and the Hindutva-wadis believe that it was built by raising a temple to Lord Ram, and they see this mosque as a symbol of slavery and subjugation that they faced for centuries by Muslim rulers. So they raised it down, and they want to build a temple to Ram in its place, and that kind of caused massive riots, Hindu-Muslim riots across the country, and it deeply entrenched this identity politics that we now see today. And it laid the foundation for all these pretty extreme right-wingers like Narendra Modi, and now an absolute extremist Yogi Adityanath.
He's a prime minister now.
He is the prime minister now, but nobody would have believed that that would be possible 20 years ago. 20 years ago, he was considered fringe, far right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
so before you go further, can you just to go back to the basics? Can you?
Yeah, the caste system.
No. Before the caste system, I think because we're talking about Hinduism and Hindutva as if the same thing.
Right.
Are they the same thing? Can you explain the difference?
Right.
Yeah.
So very loosely for your audience, let's consider it the same way we talk about Islam versus Islamism. Okay.
But there's no difference between Islam is Islamism.
Exactly. I am coming to that. To that. So how different liberal apologists and to some extent even Majid Nawaz claims that Islamism is distinct from Islam, and that Islam and a lot of other apologists say that Islam is all peaceful and everything. So a lot of liberal Hindus also try to make that distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva, but historians and writers like Jyotirmaya Sharma absolutely disagree with that. What Jyotirmaya Sharma says is that Hindutva is the dominant expression of Hinduism of our times. So to kind of
that's a key point of our time. So does that mean that it wasn't like this before? Like Hinduism was better before?
No, it was extremely dogmatic. It was the caste system was very rigid. So it had the Brahmins, who are the priestly castes. They come on the top of the ladder. The Kshatriyas, who are the warriors. The Vaishyas, who are the trader community. And then there are the Shudra, who are at the bottom. And then there are the Avarnas, who are completely outside the caste system. And for centuries,
the untouchables, right? They're called
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's say, Armin, you are an untouchable, and
I am
your
technically
father.
I am. Because I'm not in the caste system, right? So that would be no. Seriously, like within the caste system. If you're not within any of the caste, that makes you outside of the caste system. That makes you an untouchable, doesn't it?
No, that's surprisingly, and for some very strange reason, that is not true. For example, my forefathers came here as immigrants 1100 years ago, escaping Islamic persecution from Iran. And they came here as Zoroastrians, but they were treated really well. In fact, the Hindus, where they landed in Gujarat, treated them much better than they treated their own Hindu brethren from the lower castes, which has always puzzled me. And I would like to read more history to get to the bottom of that, as to why it was like that.
Armin, you should go to India.
I get so many messages from Indians telling me that, Armin, you're an Aryan. Come back to Hinduism. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I'm an Aryan, come back to Hinduism. First of all, how are these two related? Second of all, when was I ever Hindu for me to come back to Hinduism? But go on.
Yeah.
So anyway, coming back, so Hindutva is trying to whitewash this caste system by saying, oh, no. This is all a British conspiracy. Caste system was never draconian. We never mistreated anybody. It was just division of labor. That's the term they use. And they call it the Varna system. So they said that in ancient India, somebody born of a lower caste who was very intelligent could become a Brahmin, and a Brahmin who was really dull could be a shit scavenger. So yeah, that is another thing. The untouchables had only one job. They had the job of scavenging. So if you are an untouchable, your child can only do that job. Or if you are a barber, your child can only be a barber. He can never be a priest. This was how rigid the caste system was. So for centuries, for thousands of years, your entire community will have no representation in government, in politics, because everybody is a shit scavenger, But the Hindutva as an organization is trying to whitewash that and say that, oh, that is all not true. But we have historical...
Your mic is touching your shirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we have historical accounts of how... let's say, for example, in Maharashtra, the Peshwas, the ruling dynasty, was Brahmin, and they made the Mahars, who were from the lower castes, they made them wear spittoons at their chest so that their saliva wouldn't pollute the ground if they spat. So they were supposed to spit in their own spittoons, and they were supposed to tie a broom on their bums. So when they walked, the broom would kind of sweep their footsteps off. So that when a Brahmin walks,
because they're so dirty.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Wow.
But all these upper caste Brahmin Hindutva ideologues since the early 1800s have tried to kind of whitewash this and say that no, the caste system. First of all, they claim caste is a Portuguese word, and what it was is a Varna system, the division of labor, and nonsense like that. They've tried to whitewash it, and another reason for they are extremely bigoted. They themselves followed the caste system quite rigidly. Some of them, guys like Govalkar, called minorities mlechas, like barbarians, and some of them wouldn't eat from a person of lower caste if the person from lower caste offered them food, which still happens in India. I'll come to that. Yeah. So anyway, but what they saw is, what Hindutva saw is, what was happening is that the Christian missionaries came in and they started converting these lower castes, because the lower caste had zero representation. So the missionaries said, come, we'll give you food, we'll give you clothes and English education. All you have to do is accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. So they started converting in big numbers. And Hindutva saw that as a threat.
Just to be clear, like this was a big appeal of Christianity and Islam for the lower castes, right? Because Christianity and Islam preach to them that look how you're treated within Hinduism. In Islam, all Muslims are equal, or in Christianity, all Christians are equal. So that was like their main marketing method, right?
Yes, absolutely, it was. So this was a gripe that Hindutva ideologues had with Christianity, and they still do. So if you see Indian Twitter, all these far rights are always ranting about Christian missionaries, and they also got murdered, some of them, for some really innocent ones, like Graham Staines. He was a missionary in Orissa. He was burned alive in a car with his children by the Bajrang Dal, which is again a far right Hindu organization, militant organization. So they and actually to be very honest, Christianity as such is quite insignificant in India. There is no really threat from Christianity, either politically or socially. It is a little bit strong in South India, but it is still, they're a minority.
So it's mostly Islam and Hinduism then, right?
Absolutely. But if you listen to...
And that one guy that worships Trump in India that I saw.
There are a lot of them.
Did you see that video of the guy who had the shrine, that he built a shrine?
Really worship Trump, yeah. No, I'm not like not worship as in just revere, like actually literally worship as a god.
Yeah, I know. Right. Anyway, Zubin, go on. Yeah,
so Hindutva really sees Christianity as a threat, and you know how it is. I have written a whole article about how they use victimhood and persecution complex to kind of further this agenda of hatred. So they really blow it up, and they'll make it sound like most of South India is completely taken over by Christians and Muslims, things like that, which is absolutely far from the truth. But you'll hear that all the time. And so there is this constant self-pity even though upper caste Hindus are one of the most privileged, disclaimer, as being born a Parsi, I am also very, very privileged, but I'm aware of that. So the Hindus are blissfully unaware.
You just
okay,
all right.
We
should make that a thing. We should make that a thing in India for upper caste people. If you're upper caste, you have to just tell them all the time, check your caste privilege.
They indeed need to, because whether it's media or the private corporate sector or even law,
we should get all the social justice warriors to India, because I think their ideology will actually do some good there. But go on, sorry.
So upper caste Hindus really dominate all spheres, whether it's jobs or I think I read somewhere most of the high court judges. There's only been one lower caste Supreme Court judge in the history of India. Literally all of them have been upper caste men. So they are highly privileged. But if you listen to these right-wingers talk, and I don't just mean like
in India,
Hindutvawadis, I mean regular people having right leanings on Facebook, they will pretend like they are the most persecuted people ever.
What do you mean by right leaning exactly in India? What does right leaning in India mean?
Right leaning in India would mean people having sympathies to the Hindutva cause, people supporting the BJP, the right wing party,
like a hyper nationalistic, super dogmatic, religious, like all of that.
Not even religious. Some of them are very articulate. Some of them are very educated. But when you privately talk about Muslims and their bile comes out, and then they will tell you about how their temples were destroyed 600 years ago. So they blame the modern day Muslim, who literally is an Indian ethnically, because most Indian Muslims were converted. If you go back enough, maybe 600 years or 500 years, most had Hindu ancestors, right? But now Hindutva has kind of painted them as the enemy within. Okay, so there is the otherizing. So it
always works. Yeah.
That's how it works.
So I had. Isn't there some?
Go on, Ali. But then after Ali, I ask you.
So no, I have. When you were talking about how I think one of the things that happened with the Islamic invasion of India, and this may be one of the reasons that they have so many issues with it, is that Islam rose again in the 7th, 8th centuries. They came to India. They essentially invaded it like they invaded everything else, the Islamic empire, and then they. The caste system, as you said, right, just like what you were saying about the Christian missionaries, they came in and they said, well, under Islam, if you're a Muslim, if you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, then you are a Muslim, and that means you're equal to every other Muslim. So people in the lower castes, right, they found that very, very appealing, because that made them, it increased their status instantaneously by basically taking a shower and then reciting the kalma, right, the shahada. Now, what happens is now the people...
You mean the
ghusl that you have to...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you have to do a ghusl before when you convert. You have to do that, and then you have to say the kalma.
That's hardly a shower, but go on. Okay.
But whatever, close enough. The purification, right? So once they have that, so they essentially converted. So when they convert, the people in the higher caste, now these were the servants in their houses, right? These were the people that actually did all the labor, so that these people.
Hello.
The philosophy and all of the other stuff that they used to do.
Your connection is. Go on.
Am I frozen?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
You got.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Now we're back. Yeah.
So Ali, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Even I'll tell you, the caste system is so entrenched that Christians from South India and even Muslims to some extent, even though they converted so long ago, they still follow these subtle caste barriers, and they will marry within their caste stature, even though they are Christians now and Muslims now. So it is so deeply entrenched that they will not marry a convert.
Wow.
From who was an untouchable when his ancestors were Hindu.
So
it is that
even when they're Christian or Muslim,
absolutely,
they still abide the caste system. Like it's still. Oh wow, okay.
Pockets, and that is a documented fact that's widely discussed, that how deeply entrenched the caste system is.
Okay.
And I'll give you a little bit trivia, just a little bit. The oil rig is really a microcosm of India. I meet people from everywhere, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So I had this Rajasthani colleague who told me that even today, if he brings home a friend from a lower caste, he changes the name. So he'll say, instead of saying he's X, he'll tell his mother, oh, his name is Y, because they recognize from the name what caste you're from your last name and things like that. So he says that if I bring a lower caste guy to my house, my mother finds out that he ate in our house, she will throw all the vessels away. So this is how entrenched it is even today in the Hindu heartland.
There are actually Muslims in Pakistan, including people that I knew in my own extended family, that did that with Christian servants who used to come and clean. Like they wouldn't let them clean the bathroom. They wouldn't let them touch any of the dishes because they would.
I think even that is a remnant of Hindu culture, isn't it?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Because you wouldn't see a Muslim in Saudi Arabia do that.
No,
they still do.
In Islam, we have the concept of najas, which means non-Muslims are impure, and they're like, even if you shake someone's hands, which is non-Muslim, you have to wash your hand before you could pray again.
Yeah, there's some people who do that.
Yeah. So, by the way, can you tell us a little bit about Muslims that carry traffic beef and they get killed for beef selling?
See, what happened is bigotry was always there. I think it was there ever since the Islamic invasion of India. This Hindu-Muslim divide was there. What happened after the Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP, came to power is that it became open. So now you have uncles on WhatsApp who will openly talk about hating Muslims and how they are really an enemy within and shit like that. These people were first closeted bigots. Now they are openly bigoted. So ever since the BJP has come to power, all these fringe organizations, and you really can't even call them fringe anymore, because one of these far right fringe terrorists, I would call him, extremists, became the chief minister of the largest state of India, in Uttar Pradesh, and that's where most of these incidents have taken place, Armin, the ones that you talk about. So what they're doing is they're mostly targeting Muslim cattle traders on pretext of protecting the cow.
Protecting a cow, okay.
Yeah, so mostly in most of India, anyway, cow slaughter is totally banned and it doesn't happen. It's just the buffaloes that are slaughtered for beef. And India is, I think, one of the largest or second largest exporters of beef in the world. Wow. So it's really fucking hypocrisy. But anyway, so these people, they form gangs and then they patrol the highway. And if they find a Muslim driver with a truck who has cattle in it, he's not really taking it to the slaughterhouse. He has all the papers for it. They will lynch him, saying that, oh, he was slaughtering a cow or things like that, So it started off the most.
And just to tell you how widespread this is, because a lot of people think that this is just maybe India and it's not Hinduism. I used to date a Hindu girl that was from Fiji, not even from India, right? And when I met her parents, they just wanted to make sure I'm not Muslim. They didn't give a shit about anything else. As long as I told them I'm an atheist, and they were happy. They were like, that's good. Like, are you sure you're not going to go back to Islam? So that was the first time I felt like, oh, my atheism is actually like helping here. Because usually it's a negative, but this is how widespread they didn't want me to be Hindu. They didn't give a shit if I was Hindu or not. The only thing that mattered was I'm not a Muslim.
That is absolutely correct, and that is, I would say, even though most Indians wouldn't admit it openly, that's widely the predominant sentiment. And even very highly educated Hindus would tell the same thing to their kids. So this is not an anomaly. This is quite the norm. And I'll tell you very frankly, my own mother-in-law for the longest time wouldn't hire a Muslim driver. So this one time I talked to this guy and he was really nice, and I gave his number. I said, okay, I found a driver for you, like you needed him. So they fixed the salary and everything. And then she asked him, what is your name? And he said, my name is Muhammad. And she just hung up the phone. And she said, no, I don't want a Muslim driver. It is that bad. So
shit. Okay.
So this bigotry is very, very common in India. We are a very bigoted people. Although when we migrate to Canada and US and we set up things like the Hindu American Foundation, and then we act like we are all persecuted brown people and try to,
And
everybody. It's a people of color syndrome. The people of color, like,
but we will oppress people within our community, and then when we get abroad, we act like victims, and we don't, and we are. The cognitive dissonance is just astounding that you do the same bloody thing at home. What you are whining about now in the US, that's being done to you.
Wait, so is it getting worse, or is it getting better at all? Like the caste system, the racism. I mean, it's not just the caste system. It's based on skin color as well, isn't it? Like there's a lot of...
Yes. You can say that the Dravidians, as they call them in South India, are kind of little few shades darker and...
darker.
Mostly the lower castes will. I think it has a lot to do with skin color also. And by the way, Indians are obsessed with fairness. You will in matrimonial
fairness
ads,
not as in just, fair as in white skin.
Skin color. So if you see matrimonial ads,
the opposite of tanning salons. Like over here, people want to get dark. Over there, they actually have bleach creams, and they're called, like in Pakistan, it's called Fair and Lovely. There's a bleach cream that people put on their face.
Why are their gods all blue skin?
No, well,
Avatar. Avatar.
I don't understand.
So if you read matrimonial ads, like for arranged marriages and stuff, it's always looking for a slim, fair daughter or a daughter-in-law, or things like, oh, our daughter is fair and 5'8", or things like that. Fair is always ubiquitous in these.
So is it getting better or is it getting worse right now in India?
See, it's hard to tell. Every person you meet will give you a different view of it. What I think is it's coming out of the closet now. People are being openly bigoted, exactly in the way that you see happening in America, where
the US with the Trumpians,
absolutely, with the Trumpians. Now, first they were closeted racists. Now they are unabashedly racist, and that is the same thing that's happening in India. You see it on Facebook, on Twitter. So basically, this BJP government came to power on the agenda of anti-corruption, and it is such a boringly predictable move, because if you know, Armin, the Islamists in Iran came to power on the same agenda. All totalitarian regimes in South America came to power on the anti-corruption agenda. It's not like they are any less corrupt than the Congress party was, but anti-corruption was like the euphemism or the curtain behind which they hid when their real agenda was really bigotry and Hindu supremacy. And the intelligent Hindus, the educated ones who do not like to openly admit that we are voting for these guys because of Hindu identity, they hide behind this agenda, like, oh, I'm voting for these people because anti-corruption. I'm tired of corruption. Well, it's not true. They're bloody as corrupt as corruption is a cultural problem in India. But they came on this anti-corruption wave and they seized power just like any other authoritarians all over the world. And now that's like a euphemism.
All right, so one thing I wanted to point out, because most of our listeners, I think, are atheists. A lot of Hindus keep come to me like, oh, why are you shitting on Hinduism? Hinduism is atheism friendly. And you mentioned that at the beginning. Is that correct me if I'm wrong? This is basically, I don't know the details. There's a god that mentions something about not knowing where everything came from. And whether, so that's why it's atheism friendly. Why is it? What's the story that makes Hinduism atheism friendly? And is it actually atheism friendly? I actually have my own comments on that as well, but I'll let you go ahead.
Well, Armin, just like you said, it has so many branches, like you described it in the beginning. So there is one branch called Karvaka Hinduism, which is like atheism. It doesn't have any icons, or gods, things like that. So they use that as a pretext. You have to give it that being atheist in a Hindu community, you don't have to fear for your life. You can be quite openly atheist without, they are neurotic about different things. They are neurotic about menstruating women. They are neurotic about caste. They are just not as neurotic about apostasy as Islam is, So again, I mean, does that
story is that a story okay? There's a story that makes it that they keep bringing up, but here's my response to it. Like if somebody comes and tells me that, hey, my leprechaun just told me that atheists are cool. And I tell them that, well, that's bullshit. They're like, wait, why are you saying my ideology is bullshit? I just told you my leprechaun told me that atheists are cool. Like, I don't give a shit that you think atheists are cool. The fact is that you think that leprechauns are real. That's your ideology is still bullshit. Just because it's pro something, that doesn't mean it's not bullshit, right? I mean, communism is atheism friendly. That doesn't mean communism is not bullshit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, true. And most Hindutvawadis will tell you that, you are not going to be beheaded for criticizing Hinduism, so you should be thankful that you're living in this country. So
then people are like, hey, at least we don't behead you for criticizing Hinduism. Well, fucking congratulations. You want a medal? You want a medal? So, we don't behead people for criticizing us medal. Congratulations for
it's the same kind of thing. You get the same thing with Trump. Like a lot of Trump supporters will say, well, at least he's not throwing gays off rooftops. At least he's not.
I mean, so what is the bar? Really?
Yeah.
Exactly. But then in other things, the Hindu mobs are just as vicious as Islamists, like against women, like love jihad. They have this term called love jihad, where if a Muslim man falls in love with a Hindu girl, they consider it like a global conspiracy of Muslims trying to convert Hindu women, and so they call it love jihad. So and they are very anal about that. They murdered people,
guys, right?
Yeah, they lynched those people.
Lynched and killed.
Yeah. See, another thing.
I saw a video of a Hindu man burning a Muslim man because he fell in love with the Hindu girl.
Yeah.
And more recently, and just last week, there was a Muslim girl tied to a. Wait, no. Yeah, there was a Muslim girl, Hindu girl tied to a tree and beaten up because she fell in love with a Muslim boy by Hindus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This happens all the time in the cow belt. The cow belt is the central north region of India, of Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan and all these states. They are notorious for these things. So you have to realize when Hindutva came to power, and if this becomes a Hindu theocracy, it will be hell for women. It is an extremely patriarchal setup. They have women arms also, like the Durga Vahini, where they literally train these very young girls, 12, 13-year-olds, and they have these camps which look exactly like the Islamist camps, only without the fancy weapons. And they are indoctrinated. They are fed with hatred about Muslims. They are fed with hatred about Christian missionaries and how they are trying to take over India. And they are fed all this nonsense, and then there are like most of these Hindutva.
Sorry, I got it wrong. The girl was Muslim, the boy was Hindu. Wait, no.
Oh, okay.
I think the live chat is getting it wrong. I'll look it up while you talk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So all these militant arms are modeled on the brown shirts, and they take a lot of inspiration from the Nazis. And that is another thing. Mein Kampf is one of the most widely.
Oh yeah. Why is
that? Was one of my questions. I was going to ask that. So why is Mein Kampf is actually a
I'll tell you why.
Bestseller, consistent bestseller in India.
Bestseller in India. Mein Kampf. Okay, let me just get this. For people that missed it, because people might think like, what the fuck? Mein Kampf is a bestseller in India.
Yeah, it is. Okay. It is. India is one of the countries that sells the highest copies of that book, the highest number of copies. See, Indians, like I said, ever since the 1920s, all these Hindutva ideologues said that we need a strong movement. We need to be more masculine and things like that. So even today, educated Hindus talk like that. They want like a strong man. They see a strong man in Narendra Modi. They don't mind. Some of them really don't mind a dictatorship. So 77 decades of secular democracy. Indians don't value these things, and it's really sad because now I might again get a lot of flack for this, but I blame the education system.
I think you're beyond that. You're going to get flack like right, left, and center.
Okay, I got the story wrong, by the way. It was an 18-year-old Muslim girl that was tied to a tree for falling in love with a Hindu boy. But go on, sorry.
So the Indian education system is designed to produce a whole bunch of fluent English-speaking mediocre coders and accountants who don't really think for themselves. So if, like I said, the Hindutva movement and this far-right BJP, they are extremely predictable, extremely. They are just using tried and tested formulas that every authoritarian has throughout history. And educated people just don't see the peril in this, Right now, they are basking in this Hindu identity revival. But if Hindutva does come to power, it's going to be hell for liberals. It's going to be hell for women. And I don't know if you've, I really highly recommend this book, How Democracies Die. And it's by Levitsky. And if you read it, they have listed out all the symptoms of a democracy in peril. And every one of those boxes ticks for India right now, every one of them. The book is based on Trumpian America, but every symptom ticks for India as well. So we are really at a cusp right now in terms of secularism. Secularism has become a dirty word among Indians, and the Hindutva crowd has made it look like, secularism is just Muslim appeasement, and it does nothing for Hindus. But that isn't true. That isn't entirely true, because now what we are seeing is all these right-wing Hindu fascists are becoming more and more mainstream, and this never goes down well. I mean, initially, Armin, correct me if I'm wrong, the people who rejoiced at the mullahs coming to power in Iran, later, maybe after a decade or two, were really kicking themselves, weren't they?
Yes.
So just because they are from your camp, it does not mean that it's good for you. Secondly, a lot of educated Hindus also, a lot of educated Hindus see Hindutva as an antidote to Islamism.
Oh, this is like Europe. Is it exactly like Europe?
It's like Europe. It's like Trump. It's like all that. Yeah.
There are people that are not even very religious or even Christian that are saying, well, Christianity is the only thing that is standing between us and Islam. So they're supporting Christianity for that.
Yeah. But
and I've heard this so many times from educated Hindus, like really upper caste, affluent, educated Hindus saying this, that, we know it's bad. I mean, I'm not supporting it, but it is required to counter Islam, which is such an asinine and intellectually bankrupt thought. So that what I tell them is, okay, so if you are bitten by a snake, are you going to drink rat poison to counter its effects? It's exactly like that. So
what I say usually is like spreading AIDS to fight cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. So Islam is like cobra venom, and you got bit by a cobra, and now you're saying, but I need to guzzle rat poison to counter its effects. Right. It's so stupid. But the problem is,
it's actually going to make both of them worse.
So I think at this point of time, Indians as a whole don't really value what they had as a secular democracy, because and we don't read history. We don't read from other experiences of Latin America.
You don't even have to read history. You just have to look next door. So absolutely. What's really fast after the movie PK came out, there was a movie called PK, an Indian movie that was considered very blasphemous because I think it mocked the idea of Hinduism and religion in general, but it was really focused on Hinduism because it's an Indian movie. And after that, Javed Akhtar, who is an atheist writer, and he writes a lot of lyrics for the Indian movies, right?
Right.
And so he comes from a Muslim background, Javed Akhtar, but he's an atheist, and he's a very vocal and avid atheist as well. And I remember seeing him do a press conference where he was saying that people complain. They're like, well, why are you doing this? The Muslims get really mad. You never do anything to the Muslims because you're scared of what they do. And then he said something like, he's like, Kya tum unki tarah banna chahte ho? Or like, do you want to be like the Muslims?
Yes, like I've seen that clip. Yeah.
I think that, I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of, there are parallels now. And right next door in Pakistan, you have the example of people who didn't value democracy. They just thought, oh, this democratic project is not working. So military dictator comes in, martial law. Then another democratic government comes in, again, martial law. It's been happening for 70 years, and it is a borderline failed state now, because Absolutely. They never let the wheels of democracy run with all of its messes and trials and tribulations over the years. India did that, and it struggled a lot, but eventually it's at a place right now that Pakistan could only hope to be at.
All right.
So you have an example, not just in history, but right next door.
I have 4 more questions before we get to the live stream questions. One thing I want to ask is about you mentioned history. What is it called? The scientists because a lot of Indians think like all the science in the world were stolen from Hindus. What is it called? It starts with a V. What is it? The scientists that they call the Hindu scientists from ancient scientists?
India.
But go on.
I actually wanted to close this episode at the end with a quote from Narendra Modi that I've saved for this. So we'll go ahead and answer.
We have so much more to go on. But
go for it.
These idiots do believe, and that the Prime Minister has said on record that genetic engineering was there in the Vedas because our gods have animal heads on them with a human body. So that proves that we have, and he said,
can I please say the exact quote, because I think this is Narendra Modi, the head of state of India, a country that has nuclear weapons. This is what he said. He said, quote, "We can feel proud of what our country achieved in medical science at one point of time. We read all about Karna in the Mahabharata. If we think a little more, we realize that Mahabharata says Karna was born not from his mother's womb. This means that genetic science was present at that time. That is why Karna could be born outside his mother's womb." Now, he goes on to say, quote, "We worship Lord Ganesha. There must have been some plastic surgeon at the time who got an elephant's head on the body of a human being and began the practice of plastic surgery."
This is their current leader.
He's not just the Prime Minister. According to most closeted, bigoted Hindus, he's a brilliant man, and he's the only alternative we have to transform this country. That's what they'll tell you. They'll tell you,
he thinks plastic surgery was invented when they put Ganesha's elephant head on it.
Ali, there is another clip. Clip.
So wait,
go on. There's another.
No. Before, I just want to clarify what we're talking about, because what the claim is that a lot of these Western scientific advances that you see was actually discovered by Vedic. They are Vedic. The Vedas are the holy texts. Okay. So Vedic. So Hindu. Let's just simplify. Hindu scientists in ancient times, and the British colonialists came and they stole it from India. And that's why Europe became so scientifically advanced.
And Narendra Modi is a half-wit, but you won't believe people like Subramaniam Swamy. He's a lawyer from Harvard. He's an Harvard alumnus. He talks like this. He says our rishis and munis had all these. Rishis are basically Hindu, godmen and saints. They had all this knowledge in the Vedas, and the Western scientists totally stole it. But I had a roughneck. On the rig. He was a devout Christian convert. His name was Hindu, but he was converted to Christianity. He was very devout. And he told me the same thing. He said Isaac Newton stole everything from the Bible. He said, I'll show you the King James version.
Yeah, Muslims say the same thing.
So exactly. And they'll try to put everything in retrospect. After it is invented, they'll try to fit it in some scripture. So Hindus do the exact same thing. And I have known chartered accountants who will share these posts on Facebook from silly websites like the Speaking Tree or something like that, some philosophical nonsense.
Like a blueprint for airplanes in their
exactly. the Pushpak Viman. They call it the Pushpak Viman. They said that was the aeroplane in ancient India, and these people really believe it. And one time I mocked this local politician about it on Twitter, and she got really rattled. She's like, "Are you saying our stories are fairy tales?" I said, "Yeah, that's why they're called epics. The Ramayana and Mahabharata. They have no basis in history. Oh, you're calling our stories and our history fiction." So that's blasphemous, And unfortunately, Indian laws are so bad. We have the 295A, where you can be slapped with insulting religious sentiments. It's not really it's used like a blasphemy law. And it's very interesting how that
is a blasphemy law. That is a blasphemy law.
But is it actually recently? Recently somebody was trying to use it and it didn't work. But the fact that they exist is already a problem. Do they get used often?
Yeah. I mean, most of the times they get thrown out of court. But here's what it happens. You're living in the North India. One of these Hindu organizations will deliberately go in some corner of the country and file a case in some court. And then you will have to fly there for years together trying to defend yourself. So it is a very draconian law, and it's very interesting how it came about. It came about to appease Muslims, because in the early 1900s there was a Hindu editor who published a book called Rangila Rasool. It was about Prophet Muhammad. It had some very very.
I remember that. Yeah.
So it was to appease for Muslims, but now Hindus are using it.
No, hold on. So what happened was this 19, 20-year-old guy called Ilmuddin, he got really...
Which means science and religion.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, okay. So quite ironic, because he got riled up by his local imam and he went and murdered that editor. As soon as the editor opened the shop in the morning, he went and stabbed him in the chest. And then he went happily to the gallows. His lawyer defending him was Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He never lost a case in his life except this one, because his client said, "I willingly want to go to the gallows for Ummah." And he went to the gallows, and Muslims all over pre-independent India agitated, and Jinnah lobbied for this law to come in place. So the British obliged, and 295A came about, where you cannot insult religion. You cannot insult religion with the intent of causing communal disharmony. So the wording is very tricky. They will not say, "Oh, gods are sacred," because it's a secular democracy. But as soon as you criticize, even any legit criticism of Hinduism can be come under the purview of this law, and you can be accused of inciting mobs or inciting violence by criticizing Hindu practices. Stuff like that.
Okay, so I have a question regarding a lot of Hindus come to me and say, like, "Look, Armin, Hinduism is such a feminist religion, because in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they only worship a male god, but in Hinduism, they have both female and male god, which shows how female friendly and feminist Hinduism is."
Yeah. What they won't tell you is that even today, in a lot of Brahmin households, menstruating women are treated like animals. I have heard from Brahmin women friends how they were totally ostracized during their periods. And what they won't tell you is, up until the late 1800s, women were thrown into their husband's funeral pyre alive. The practice of sati, which the British abolished, and things like that. What they won't tell you is that.
Okay, that's a very important. Before you go, that's a very important point, because a lot of times people blame stuff on British. Like they say, like, "Oh, well, things weren't as bad until the British colonialists came and made it that bad," right? For example, the blasphemy law that you gave as an example.
Yeah.
But actually, here's an example where it was actually worse, and the British came and made it better. Burning women alive. The British in Hinduism. British put a stop to it. But go on. Yeah.
Well, a lot of Indian free thinkers and progressives lobbied for it. There's no doubt. But all those people were also very Western educated, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, people like that. So I won't take it away from them. They did contribute to the reform. It was not just the British,
right.
But Hindutva organizations have always been in opposition of any of these changes. So even after independence, when there was a proposal to change the Hindu Marriage Act so that a priest is not required to sanctify the ceremony, the Hindutva organizations were the first to, oppose it. And secondly, you should ask them, oh, if you worship all these goddesses, why do Hindu women still don't get any inheritance? Why the Hindu inheritance laws are pretty skewed.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, against. I have colleagues.
That's very much like Islam then in that situation.
Yeah, I have colleagues from the cow belt. In fact, I think the Muslim inheritance laws are a little more progressive in India than the
shit.
one.
Okay.
It's quite shocking. But
Wait,
anyway.
do you have different legal? Do you have like? Is it kind of becoming Sharia? Hindus get different laws than Muslims?
Yes. That is one really crappy thing that came out of the constitution. These personal laws. So you have the Parsi Marriage Act and the special. And if you're intermarrying someone, if the couple is not from the same caste, from the same religion, then you get married under the Special Marriage Act. But otherwise, if you're from the same religion, the same laws apply. And when you go in for a divorce, at that time, you have to abide by that same act also.
So different religions get different laws under the same country.
Not some civil laws. I wouldn't say that. Are different. So the inheritance laws in amongst Hindus are really pretty shitty. Things like that. So all this, we worship goddesses is just a cover. We are deeply sexist and misogynist as a country, and
and actually even the story of the gods is quite misogynist. Like this guy had to abandon his wife just because he feared that he might have had sex with somebody, and he didn't want her to be impure. Not only he didn't even know if she was impure, he didn't want the embarrassment of his wife potentially being impure, which is basically even the story of the Hindu gods basically encourages purity culture, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of purity culture, and not just that. Exactly like Islam, Hindu culture also considers female sexuality as the property of the clan. Something that has to be protected. That is how all this love jihad nonsense. And you
have honor, basically, the same kind of honor culture that you have.
Absolutely. That's where the underlying premise of this love jihad nonsense is that Hindu women have no autonomy. They don't have any agency. They can't fall in love with a Muslim man. It has to be that they have been tricked into it by the Ummah. And it's a big global conspiracy against to kind of rob Hindu women, things like that.
Honor culture and even child marriage and all these things are actually quite. They're fairly rampant in India, right?
Absolutely.
I think that. So there's I just remember growing up when we used to watch the Bollywood movies. And they would always refer to rape as Izzat Lutna, right?
Absolutely.
Izzat Lutna translates to stealing your honor. So the whole idea is once you rape somebody, you've stolen their honor, and now that woman is never going to be honorable. I mean, just the language that they used for it in the mainstream culture was just basically.
And it's still the same. And Bollywood movies are deeply sexist, deeply sexist also even today. So, it glorifies things like stalking and, badgering women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sting did that with Every Breath You Take. I'll be watching you. So.
Well,
no, but you're right. That's what it is. The more usually the guy persists, he harasses, persists, and then eventually the girl says, "Okay."
There's a huge Me Too thing happening in India now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's also
absolutely it is, and it's fantastic that all these women are coming forward. And but again, you see a lot of victim blaming and nonsense by men like, "Oh, why is she coming after 10 years?" or "Why is she anonymous?" A bullshit like that. And a lot of victim blaming, and we still have to go a long way, but it's a fantastic development.
And every time we post about on Atheist Republic, we post about the fact that women are, there's a lot of rape and there's a lot of mistreatment of women in India. People are always like, well, it's not as bad as so-and-so, it's not as bad as this place.
It's Sweden. They say it's not as bad as Sweden.
Yeah. So you hear Hindutva say this all the time about Kerala. Kerala is a very progressive state in India.
Right.
it has a lot of Christians, and so they will say, "Oh, Kerala is taken over by Christians and Muslims." Like they'll make it look like it's Fallujah or something like that. Anyway, coming to this Me Too thing, this friend of mine, he forwarded this message to me that his uncle sent him, and it's been doing the rounds in Hindutva WhatsApp groups. So let me tell you a little bit about Hindutva. They are very social media savvy. They have these WhatsApp groups with lakhs of people on it, and they will share fake news on it. They will share propaganda on it. They'll do all kinds of things. So as usual,
it's like ISIS.
So as usual, they're deeply misogynist and sexist. So this is something they've shared. You do me favors, I do you favors. 30 years later, let's call it Me Too. A strong woman does not wait 30, 20, 10 years to speak up. She slaps him on the first bad touch and knocks him out. Don't hide your weakness. The favors in returns that you enjoyed and the work you got by. I was too scared. Cry now. You were scared to say no then because it was hard to stand up for what was right, and you were scared to lose your status and position in the workplace. So you chose to accept the molestation and went back for more. This is a fucking message that educated Indians are sharing in WhatsApp groups. This guy is settled abroad. My friend's uncle, he's settled abroad. They are a very progressive family. Of course, so this is the thing. This is a beautiful thing that this is what makes me see hope. My friend comes from an upper caste Brahmin family, but he's fiercely opposed to Hindutva, and he constantly challenges people in his own family who peddle bullshit like this. And if it comes to taking up arms against Hindutva and protecting secular democracy, I'm sure he'll be at the forefront with me. So this is what gives me hope. But you see these messages. This is what educated Indians, highly privileged Indians share in WhatsApp groups these days. So this is how bigotry and hate and misogyny has become mainstream ever since Hindutva has come to power. It was always there in closets. This is what our culture was. But now it has come out in the open. It's just, I'm literally, the wall to the sewer has broken, and it's just smelling everywhere.
So one last question, and then Ali, if you don't have any questions after that, we could go into.
I have one more question after that, and then we can go to patron questions.
Other than the caste system, something that is very within core of Hinduism, and correct me if I'm wrong, these two concepts of karma and reincarnation. And I know that there's a lot of different streams of Hinduism, but I think it's fair to say that this is within, if anything can be core, I know I said there's no core, but if anything can be close to core, these would be included in it. The understanding of karma and reincarnation. Is that correct?
I think so, yes. The caste system being the core, even though apologists will deny it, but it absolutely is. It dictates every aspect of one's life from birth to death, and it still does in most of the in the heartlands. It still does.
So if that's at all close to core, and I know there's people say there's no core, but if anything is core, if these are core, these are hugely problematic views. Both karma and reincarnation. I mean, the whole idea of this life not being the only life you get is a very dangerous idea, and also the concept of karma. Which has two problems with it. Is, first of all, it makes people think that they're justified, like people that are in bad situations right now, that are being that are in misery, or people that are poor, they must have deserved it because they have done something in their after. And also to have hope in a justice beyond the justice that we as humans could come up with in a different life after this is also a very harmful ideology. So even if all this Hindu nationalism, Hindutva stuff, even if you put away caste system, and even if you say, well, it's better than Islam, we won't kill you because you criticize Hinduism, at the end of the day, it's superstitions. It's claims without evidence, and just like all other claims without evidence, it comes with nonsense, and nonsense is usually harmful. Even if it's as mild as just karma and reincarnation, these are harmful, dangerous ideas. And if you actually believe in them, if you literally believe these things are true, you are operating on a belief system that is not based on reality, and therefore you are at a disadvantage to people that their belief system closely matches reality in much closer. But go on, sorry.
Absolutely. And also, let's not discount the fact that Hinduism has unleashed atrocities on the lower castes and the Avarnas for millennia. I mean, just because it is not internationally talked about, it doesn't make it any less horrible. This ideology has taken a whole bunch of people, and from generation after generation, subjugated them to the lowest menial labor, and they couldn't draw water from the community wells because the water would get polluted if they kind of touched it, and this shit still goes on today in pockets, and it goes on today in urban areas, in affluent places, very subtly. Like in job interviews, they'll look at your last name and they'll know what caste you're from, and upper caste people pull each other in, and that's why if you see the percentage of jobs going in the private sector also, and compare it with the percentage of upper caste people in India, the ratio is highly skewed. So let's not discount these atrocities. It's not just superstition, but it had some very, very ridiculous social evils as well.
Okay, so Ali, you ask your question, and they'll go to the comments and questions in the live chat. Ali, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
I know, yeah. I'm unmuted now. So, Zubin, I want to ask you sort of like one last question, which is, first of all, how do you fight this, right? Like the sort of the Hindu extremism, and how is it different from fighting Islamic fundamentalism? So you have this whole Hindutva nationalistic stuff, and then you have the Islamic fundamentalism and everything. Not only in India, but I guess because you kind of work on it, you write for HuffPost, you write for The Nation, and so on. So you've been exposed to this, and Atheist Republic.
Don't forget Atheist Republic. Okay.
But that's the most important. I was saving the best for last.
Okay.
But you have this, and you've been doing this for a while now. So what differences do you see, or what parallels do you see when you're trying to resist both, not only in India, but first in India and then outside?
Like I said in the beginning, in the Indian context, I see a lot of hope because the average liberal Hindu and leftist Hindu and secular Hindu is extremely vehemently opposed to Hindutva, and they are one of the strongest voices opposing it, which unfortunately I don't see among Indian Muslims combating dogma and extremism within their own community. Now, again, I may be wrong. I'm absolutely open to being corrected with examples, but it's just not that visible. So there is some hope. Of course, I definitely believe that majoritarian bigotry is much more dangerous, which is why or people will say that, but Hindutva doesn't go around, with automatic weapons, and which is true. The worst terrorist attacks in India were Islamic attacks. Happened from outside in recent years. But the Hindutva crowd is really catching up with the murders and the crude bombs and stuff like that. So, and also, I think Hindutva is more poisonous because it has the potential to change the future of this country. Because if secular democracies, sometimes they fall like cards. We've seen it happen in Argentina. We've seen it happen all over the world. And when you have a majoritarian support against an extremist ideology like that, then it is far more dangerous. Even though Islamists and Islam may be far more dangerous on a global scale, in the Indian context, I think Hindutva is the bigger enemy. So the only way I see combating this is if more secular Hindus come out in support of secularism and reject this idea of a Hindu theocracy. I don't know how to compare it on a global scale. I'd say they don't have the fancy weaponry that ISIS has, but ideologically they are just as dangerous. A lot of people will argue that Hindutva is just a reaction to Islam. Well, that is not true. It has its own victimhood and persecution complex and supremacy and some race-based things as well. Savarkar's ideas were very much about race and ethnicity, and so it is basically like any other supremacist movement, and it should be taken very, very seriously.
So to actually touch on that, the reason why it would probably never become a global threat is because it's not a globalist ideology like Christianity and Islam, where they're both trying to spread all over the planet, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But Hinduism is content with India, but that's not saying much because India is like
1.2 billion people.
1/7 of the entire fucking planet, right? So that's a big part of the planet, right? So
absolutely, but that's not the only thing, Armin. I'll tell you another thing. When Indians migrate abroad, they take these shitty practices with them. If you see, I read a long time back that in Indian enclaves in Canada, the sex ratio was really skewed because in India, we have a huge problem with aborting the female child because the male progeny is considered more favorable, so which is why in India it is a criminal offense if you go for a sonography and the doctor tells you the sex of your fetus. It's a criminal offense. The doctor can be imprisoned because Indians abort the girl child. There are 50 million Indian girl childs who have been aborted just in the last few decades. It's rampant. But when these people go to Canada, and there is no such restriction in Canada, and they take these practices there. And if you see in some Indian communities, the sex ratio is extremely skewed because it's so easy to abort the girl child purely because of her sex. So we are. So it's not like, of course, it is not a threat on a global scale like Islam is, but we are taking these shitty cultural practices and infecting the world, just like Somalian Muslims took female genital mutilation to Europe, things like that. So whenever you will have, and Indians migrate like, I think no other community, we are everywhere, literally. So
we're watching you.
So we
everywhere. No, but yeah, you're right. Like even outside of India, Hindus, there's so many Hindus there that they're everywhere, include like not just in India, right? But go on.
And also in the United States now, these bigoted organizations like the Hindu American Foundation, they are lobbying again to whitewash the caste system. In universities, they don't want caste system to be portrayed as it is being portrayed, just like they're doing in India. The incumbent government is trying to change textbooks and hide all these social evils of Hinduism and portray their ideologues as some kind of heroes, which they were absolutely not. And it's literally trying to change history from the primary level itself. And they are doing the exact same thing by lobbying in the US. So that is another threat that I think that they pose.
All right. So should I go to live chat questions?
Yeah, let's do. We've got 10, 15 minutes. So let's just do the live
chat. Really quick answers, okay? Because we want to get to most of them. So good morning, comrades. One question for your guests. If you had to choose with a gun on your head, would you prefer Hindu nationalism or political Islam?
I would choose neither. I can't make up.
Okay, I know you have. It's a gun.
I'd say shoot myself. I mean, shout me. I don't want either.
You take the bullet. Okay.
See, this is what you're going to get a lot on Twitter. They are going to try to tell you that it's not as bad as Islam. Right. This is going to be the common trope. Your TL is going to be filled with that shit.
Yeah,
but it's a faulty comparison.
But the thing is,
do you want the people who buy Mein Kampf, or do you want the people who are like?
The thing is that they're basically comparing themselves to the world's shittiest ideology, and they're congratulating themselves for being better than that. Like, what? Tell me which ideology is not better than Islam. That's not an accomplishment, okay? being better than Islam is not an accomplishment. Okay, and one more question. Does the moral philosophy of Hinduism contain some advantage over Abrahamic moral philosophy? Specifically, would it be better to formulate ethics in the language of wisdom versus ignorance as opposed to good versus evil?
I don't think so. I think you can pick and choose and find redeeming things in every philosophy, but that's not how it's supposed to be. If you find evils, you'll find as many evils in Hindu scripture as you do in Abrahamic scriptures. I don't think I would want to throw all this trash out altogether.
Okay, so
and I know, Armin, you feel that way as well.
Yes, very much so. Not just religion, all bullshit. Has Hinduism undergone a resurgence of fundamentalism in response to modernity, such we have seen with the Abrahamic Trinity? I think we responded to that one already, no?
Yeah.
Yes, resurgence.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a resurgence. So it went from being a reformist movement in the early 1800s to a revivalist movement in the early 1900s. So people like Dayanand Saraswati and Savarkar said, "Oh, we don't need to reform Hinduism; we need to revive it." And that's why Hindutva has all the dogmatic bullshit of Hinduism, and it's just been exacerbated and magnified.
Okay.
So it's really a revivalist movement.
So next question, who are the most famous sports athletes who are Hindu from India? Is sports other than cricket played much? With the population size, it doesn't seem that India has a lot of international athletes. Does that have to do anything with Hinduism? Oh, I don't know.
No, it doesn't have to do anything with Hinduism. It's just that we are, after all, not a very affluent country. Most of our population lives under 150 rupees a day. So anyway,
Right.
I'm going to pass. They have a pretty good cricket.
In response to you saying Christianity is not a big deal in India, there was a question. So how is Mother Teresa seen? Was she hated by the far right?
Yeah, she was hated. So that is very unfortunate that Hitchens put up such a fantastic case against Mother Teresa, but it was co-opted by the far right because of their anti-missionary crusade.
Right.
So so a lot of good arguments even against Islam are always co-opted by the far right. That is, Ali, you talk a lot about that and how to deal with that, and that's fantastic how you put it in perspective. But that happens all the time. So if I criticize Mother
around
Teresa,
the world, like pretty much far right movements have been like they've co-opted a lot of the ex-Muslim conversations that we're having within ourselves to serve their own thing. Whereas the whole thing is that we're fighting a far right ideology, and the solution to that is not to go over to another far right ideology just because they're not chopping off heads.
Yeah.
Right?
So two quick comments. One of them is saying karma is a control mechanism of upper caste to keep it status quo. Is that accurate? Yeah. It's a control mechanism. We don't know, but
it could be.
It could be. Another person is saying caste is core of Hinduism. It's resulting in too many people facing injustice by society itself. And that is a lot of people saying that's not today anymore, but no, still today it's happening.
Absolutely. And not just that, Armin, caste is not just the only problem. Caste blindness is a huge problem. The upper caste privileged people, including Parsis, we come under the upper caste because we are extremely privileged, even though we are not Hindu. We have this tremendous caste blindness, and we'll keep saying, "Oh, we never see caste," and things like that, or "Oh, we are."
Why are non-Hindu Parsi people are so high privileged? Like, what is if it's not Hindu?
So that's what I told you. I couldn't figure as to why my forefathers, when they came to India, were treated better than the untouchables within Hinduism.
Do you think there's an obsession with Persian, like the Persian worship, like in Pakistan?
Also, yes, Aryan, that nonsense about being Aryan.
Yes.
And of course, because we are like a few shades lighter than the rest of the population. And I told you, I told you, light skin is, Indians are really obsessed with it. And secondly, we are a very privileged, affluent community. Like per capita income wise, Parsis are the highest in the world. We own a lot of real estate. We were very privileged. So
Ambedkar?
That's right.
What's Ambedkar? They say it's relevant to this discussion.
Well, absolutely.
What is that?
He was one of the people on the Constituent Assembly. He basically wrote the Constitution. He was an untouchable. He was from the lower caste, and but he rejected Hinduism all out, and he wrote this fantastic book called Annihilation of Caste. I highly recommend it to everybody to understand the evils of Hinduism, where he literally trashed Hinduism, and he told the untouchables and the Avarnas to convert en masse to any other fairy tale. I think he was atheist. I can't be sure, but he was very progressive. He was very ahead of his time, and a lot of good things which are in the constitution. We need to be thankful to him for it. But again, the Hindutva crowd hates him. They hate him for being anti-Hindu.
What about okay? So please ask another question. Please ask him if he knows that Savarkar.
Yeah.
Do you know Savarkar was an atheist? Was an atheist who worked hard against the caste system. Again, but some other people are saying. Wait, let me finish the question. Again, not a Savarkar fan, but just of the facts. But another person in live chat mentioned that that Savarkar never opposed the caste system. But go on.
One minute. Yeah. So Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, as I said, he was a Brahmin from the upper caste, as were all the Hindutva ideologues. He was the one who coined the word Hindutva. I mentioned that before. He was a militant. At the age of 12, he vandalized a mosque. He was a rabble rouser and a complete. But now the current Hindutva government is a kind of. Remodeling him as some kind of hero, and they call him Veer Savarkar. He was no Veer. He wrote mercy petitions to the British sitting in the jail in Port Blair. Anyway, so he was very vicious against Muslims. He may have been an atheist, but he was a Hindu supremacist. He's the one who coined Hindutva. He said that India is for Hindus, people who are racially Hindu. And he said that, and this is from his book, he said that even though Muslims were converted and racially they are Hindu, they can never be one of us because their allegiance lies to the global caliphate and not to India as the fatherland. So he considered India to be the fatherland for the Hindus. Right. He considered so he was a Hindu supremacist. Whether he believed in fairy tales or not is different.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that because we're atheists, we're going to support everybody that was an atheist. Like we can admit that some guy who didn't believe in fairy tales was an asshole at the same time. Like we're not tribal. We're not going to be like, well, this guy was an atheist and he was an asshole. So what would you say to that? Well, he was an asshole then, I guess. And also, I think there's another person in the live chat is saying Ambedkar was Buddhist. So I guess I don't know if the implication is that because he's a Buddhist, we're not going to support his good deeds. Like I don't think we're that tribal. Like we know if somebody does, you go on.
He converted to Buddhism as a fuck you to Hinduism. That was his thing. Okay. Yeah, that was his only thing. He was far ahead of his time. I don't think he really was a devout Buddhist, or he thought that he converted to Buddhism because it was a fantastic ideology. No. And another thing, the Hindutva thinkers like Vivekanand, they wouldn't call it Hindutva because Hindutva as a word hadn't formed at that time, but Vivekanand formed the ideological basis of this movement. Also, he contributed a lot. All these people riled against Buddhism. I can't be sure if it was Vivekanand, but Dayanand Saraswati definitely did. They riled against Buddhism because, see, after all, it's a numbers game. And they consider any other ideology that takes numbers away from Hinduism as the enemy. So even though Buddhism as an ideology is benign, it was also seen as an enemy by the Hindutva.
By the way, we need to have an episode to shit on Buddhism at some point. But you're also very you're an ex-Zoroastrian, so we might actually have you on to talk about Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on to talk about Zoroastrianism too.
But last question: Uniform Civil Code. Do you want to? Do you want to just quickly touch on that?
That is another. So the Hindutva Brigade has taken up this cause, saying, like I talked about these personal laws, and yes, a lot of them are kind of silly. And a lot of them, like Muslim men, are allowed to have 4 wives and things like that. So the Hindutva wants to abolish all that and have a uniform civil code. Now, on the face of it, it might seem like a noble pursuit, but they also have their own agendas behind it. Once they do that, they will kind of try to push all kinds of nonsense Hindu practices and social customs and foist that on everybody else and make that as the monolith or the main ethos. And that has been Hindutva's ideological aim ever since its inception, ever since 1925. Savarkar and Govalkar have talked about this, to have this monolithic social Hindu order for the whole country, So even though Uniform Civil Code might, at the face of it, sound like a noble pursuit that, oh, we abolish all these favoritism and personal laws and have one law for everybody. I don't know, once it is on paper and if it ever gets executed, how good it will be.
Okay. And before I forget, where can people? Some people were happy with you as like your views, and they wanted to see more of your work and articles. Where can people find you?
So the best way is at Z Madon. That's at Z Mario Alpha Denmark Orange Nigeria. That's my Twitter handle. You'll find the link to my HuffPost UK page and HuffPost India pages over there. Also, the Nation.
Very, very highly recommended, by the way. Just the insights are, this is fantastic insights.
Yeah, your articles are very, very, very good. Jeff is saying in the live chat, this guy was a good guest. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks. Thanks.
No. Yeah. It was really. I could go on actually for even longer.
So many questions. Yeah.
I don't want to bore the listeners with history trivia. Otherwise, I could really go into the year and everything and how Hindutva really came about as a movement. But I don't think that some people might find that too boring. So I kind of left that out.
I want to mention. I think that one of the. I'm already seeing it. Like, as people were just asking, they're like, "Oh, if you have." If you want to talk about Hindutva, why don't you call somebody who's from the movement to come and talk about it? Why don't you call somebody who's into Hinduism? And the problem with that is, first of all, we do want to do that. Eventually, we do want to talk to somebody who's from the movement. I'd be really, really interested to hear what they have to say.
If you are one of the Hindu nationalists, please come on the show.
Right. But what I like doing is if you want to really learn about Greek mythology, then you don't want to get somebody who literally believes that Zeus and Hera were gods on Olympus, right? So because you're going to get a completely different perspective. So I think that one of the things with you is that
I'm not emotionally invested. I'm not emotionally invested in either one of these philosophies. I understand that.
Yeah, so for the audience, I mean, the reason that we wanted to have Zubin on is because, I mean, he writes on international forums. He lives in India. He's very, very well versed in the situation, and he doesn't have a dog in the fight. He's not Muslim. He's not Hindu. He's not a fan of Islamic fundamentalism. He's not a fan of Hindu extremism. He's also an atheist. Right. So even though he's from a Zoroastrian background, and you were an ordained priest at age 12, right?
I was an ordained priest. I mugged all these scriptures in ancient Avastan and Pahlavi. I did all that.
Jesus.
But I'll tell you again. Going back to that Savarkar thing, I don't think I was very devout, but I was very ethnocentric at that time and very culturally centric, So I somewhere at the back of my mind, I knew this was fairy tales and bullshit. Right. But even then, it was culturally important for me. Of course, now it absolutely isn't. And race, ethnicity, culture, nothing matters to me anymore. But at that time, I was like that. So you cannot discount a person's extremism or right-wing leanings just because he's an atheist or he doesn't believe in a God.
By the way, for people that are in the live chat that didn't get the full, didn't join us halfway through, just search for Secular Jihadists on your podcast app or on YouTube. The audio version of this will be released in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. Also, it's funny because in the live chat, some people really loved it and some people are disappointed. And we're like, bring somebody that is more fair, which is funny because whoever you bring, somebody's going to say like,
especially on this topic.
Yeah, people are going people are always, whoever doesn't agree with you, people are going to think you haven't been fair to them.
I think that we were very fair. I think, you brought in, this was very educational to me. I was like, okay, I'm just going to listen.
This was great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Before we,
go on.
thank you so much. Before we leave, last question. I know that you don't associate with the religion part of it at all, and you just wanted the cultural thing, but now you've gotten rid of it. But do you still feel a little excited about the fact that Bohemian Rhapsody is coming out with, it was just a biopic about Freddie Mercury of Queen, who was Farrokh Bulsara, who was a Parsi from Zanzibar.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very fascinating. From that. See, we are a community of only 69,000 people in the whole world. There are only 69,000 ethnic Parsis alive today. So it's a very close-knit community, even though ethnicity is not important to me anymore and all. But yeah, I mean, when I was young, yeah, Farokh Balsara was a big thing, you know, that, a Parsi singer. Yeah.
Oh, and he is absolutely. He's one of my favorite singers of all time. Like I remember I was in high school when they had his that concert when he died and all of that. It was just, Jesus, it was amazing. I've been trying to teach my daughter to sing Bohemian Rhapsody, but then she's like, "Put a gun against his head, pull the trigger, now he's dead." I'm like, maybe she should wait a little bit.
Ali, have you been to India? Ever to India?
No, I haven't. It's my ancestral homeland, but now I can't go back there anymore.
Why?
No, I was just making a parallel with the Middle East situation. It was a joke.
But yeah, can you go to India? You can't go to India. I want to go to India, but a lot of people tell me that like there's too many Muslim fundamentalists that don't go there, and like I
have heard my brother's ex-wife was Indian and Hindu. She was from Gujarat, and I remember he wanted to go there, but there was, I don't know if they still have that thing where you have to renounce your Pakistani citizenship to be able to go. Because I know
invited us to their home in the live chat, by the way. Saruba. I don't know. So
let me just say, it was so good talking to both of you, because I idolized you when I started off with atheism. I thought Why There Is No God is the most fantastic book, and it's like, you know, it explains it at such a basic level. It's such a beautiful, and it's an absolutely non-confrontational atheist book. And I'm surprised because you're very confrontational on everything all the time. But the way you wrote that book is, and of course, Ali, I have been following from the very beginning. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And
it's totally mutual, man. I mean, it's like, especially on this, yeah. But go ahead.
And also, for the listeners, if they want to understand more about Hindutva, I'd highly recommend this book Hindu Nationalism by Christoph Jaffelot, and also the book Hindutva by Jyotirmaya Sharma. They're both fantastic books. Just to get you started, there's a whole bunch of other reading material, but I think these two books really give the basics of how this movement started and why it is such a poisonous ideology. Anyway.
Okay, no, that's great. And we're going to have the links in the description for Zubin's articles, your Twitter, all of that stuff, how they can find you.
I am very confrontational, but when I actually, even in real life, when I talk, when the other side is a religious person.
When it's one-on-one, yeah.
No, yeah, even when it's not one-on-one, when my audience is religious people, I am very friendly. Like that, when I was writing the book Why There Is No God, I was assuming, like, I'm not talking to atheists. I was assuming that my main audience I was writing to was religious people. So I don't hold punches when it comes to shitting on religion, but when it comes to talking to religious people, I make sure I'm very polite, and I make sure that I talk to them in terms that they can continue having a conversation with me. Like, there's no point in having a conversation in a way that they will stop having a conversation with you, right? So there's different goals requires different approaches, right? So my tone is completely different when I'm actually talking to religious people. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So thank you very much to everybody who joined. I know that we didn't have YouTube and everything this time for the patron live stream, but we will have this up on there for patrons to see later on. I'm sorry if anybody didn't get to participate, but just a reminder, the website is up at secularjihadist.com. We are looking to get to 500 patrons. So once we get to 500 patrons, what we want to do is we're going to start translating a lot of our episodes into Arabic, Urdu, Persian, Turkish, Bengali, Indonesian, Malay, and beyond. So we're going to start doing that fairly soon once we get there. And thanks to everybody who supports this to do it. I want to say that if you can't support it financially, you don't have to. If you talk about it, if you share the links and everything, that's more than enough. I mean, this is. So thank you all for your support. Everybody's listening.
Soraya in the live chat is saying you guys nailed it. Oh, thank you, Soraya. And just to be clear, like, I think the first So once we get, like Ali said, once we get to 500 patrons, and again, that's patreon.com/SJME, but it stands for Secular Jihadists for Muslim Enlightenment. I think the first 2 episodes that we're going to translate, we're going to pick Arabic as the language to translate to, and we're going to use the Quran episode where we review the Quran, and the one that we review Muhammad's life. Those 2, I think, are the main...
With Abdullah Gondal, yeah.
I think those are going to be the most useful episodes to translate first. Yeah,
I think you should do the first couple of episodes where you each tell your own story, and Faisal tells your story. That was a fantastic episode. I still remember hearing it at the gym, listening to Faisal's story and your story and everything. It was a really great episode.
I think we should do that, especially Armin, like with your story. That was pretty. Oh man. Anyway, well, we'll get to that. And anybody who's listening to this, do go out and check out the very first episode we have, because that is probably our most popular
Mike in the live chat is saying live long and prosper. I always love that when he says that. Beej is saying thank you, gentlemen and ladies. And Christina is saying night. All right, goodbye everybody.
All right, guys.
All right,
thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.